The rabbis teach that baptism goes all the way back to the garden. This is fascinating. They teach when Adam and Eve were cast out of the garden, what they say is that immediately they went into a state of repentance. And Adam went and immersed in the Jordan River. And Eve went and immersed in the Tigris. Now, what's amazing to me is two things. Number one, the rabbis take baptism all the way back to the very beginning. But the second thing that is amazing to me is they associate baptism with repentance. That there is a direct correlation, there is a direct connection. And that is something today you are going to see as a fact. As we open up our Bibles, we get to the first, we look at creation account. We read about Adam and Eve, and almost immediately after that, we're confronted with the greatest cataclysmic event the world has ever seen. And what is that? It's the flood. I want you to think about something, because this is so important when it comes to baptism. God flooded the world. In other words, he baptized it, he immersed it. This is what he did. The question is, and where I want you to really go with this and understanding baptism, its need, its purpose, why did God baptize the earth? Why did he immerse it? Sin. As you would read in Genesis, Hamas, violence. It becomes so wicked, so vile, it had to be purified. How did the Lord choose to purify the earth? Baptism. Okay, when we're talking about baptism, we're talking about a purification from sin. There's a cleansing process. Now, this is fascinating, but I want to just jump briefly to the New Testament because Peter makes this connection. The interesting thing about Peter is he comes at it from a different angle. And I want to share with you what he says. This is what he says in 1 Peter 3:20. When once the divine long-suffering waited in the days of Noah, while the ark being prepared, in which a few, that is 8 souls, were saved through water. I want to point something out. Peter was very careful in his choice of words. Okay? He didn't say saved from water. That's what you would expect him to say because God destroyed the earth. And you would expect him to say, no, he was saved from water. That's not what he says. In the Greek, it stands true. He says saved dia, through water. Now, I'm going to tell you, when you start throwing words, and we've talked about this, when you start throwing salvation on the table, you got my undivided attention. Now I know what we're talking about is life and death. This is meaningful. It goes to the top of my list. And Peter's throwing terms around like salvation, that Noah was saved through baptism, through the water. And now he goes on and he says this. There's also an antitype which now saves us, baptism. Not the removal of the filth of the flesh. In other words, we're not like the Gentiles or Greeks that, the reason we take a bath is to wash the dirt off. That's not what this is. He's referring to Yeshua's baptism, that we're going into his baptism. And one thing we discover right here, right now, is baptism is not simply a fleshly thing. It is spiritual. And if you don't get that component, you will never understand baptism. You'll never get it. It is totally a spiritual event. We're going to go back to the Torah. The time where God takes his people out of Egypt. He delivers them. He brings them to the foot of Mount Sinai for one purpose. He wants to enter into covenant with them. This is why he has brought them. We're going to enter into covenant. But here's what's interesting. He has a requirement of them. They have to do something. There's one thing specifically mentioned, and I want to share that with you. As we open up into Exodus 19, verse 10, we read, Then the Lord said to Moshe, Go to the people and consecrate them today and tomorrow, and let them wash their clothes. They have to wash their clothes. Now you might say, well, we wash clothes all the time. What's that mean? You need to understand the nomenclature of Torah. When the Torah presents this, that it says washing clothes, it is saying baptism. Torah is not meant to be read in isolated forms, where I take one passage and that's it. Torah is only meant to be read in its totality. This is how it's to be understood. Let me give you an example. When I go to Leviticus 11, there it says, hey, if a clean animal dies of its own, of natural causes, or is torn by beast, and you eat of it, see, the Torah kind of frowns upon it. You're not supposed to eat of it, even though it's clean. But if you do eat of this clean animal that died of itself or was torn by beasts, then you shall wash your clothes. Leviticus 11 is very clear. What's interesting is just go a couple chapters later, Leviticus 17, the very exact same commandment. If you eat an animal that's clean, that dies of itself or it's torn by beasts, well, then you shall wash your clothes and you shall bathe in water. And so this is why I point this out, is when we see this, that Israel's come to the foot of the mountain and they're told you wash your clothes, what's being implied is you need to wash your body, your entire body. You're going to be prepared. You're going through a baptism, if you will. This is what's happening. Now, this is significant because there's something about this event that we learn. They have come and drawn near to God to come into covenant with him. This is about covenant. And before they do that, they enter into a mikvah. They enter into a washing, into a baptism. You want to understand the baptism, Yeshua's baptism that we're baptized into, and what it is we're being baptized into? We're coming into covenant. We're coming to be children of the new covenant. It's the same. The very same requirements that the Lord set up at Sinai are the same requirements that exist today for the new covenant. Let's jump ahead a little bit further to Exodus 30. And the Lord, he gives commands in regard to the tabernacle, that they need to erect a tabernacle, and there's all these elements that belong in the tabernacle, one of which is the laver. And let me read this to you. And you shall make a laver of bronze, with its base also of bronze. Why? For washing. You shall put it between the tabernacle of meeting and the altar, and you shall put water in it. For Aaron and his sons shall wash their hands and their feet and water from it. Okay, so when Aaron and his sons, they come into the temple area, here's your brazen laver right here. They would go to those waters and they would wash. And it's interesting. Remember, look at what it says here. Let me go back. They shall wash their hands and their feet. What did we learn? We learned this a couple weeks ago. What is the beginning of a man? It is his hand. What is the end of a man? It is his feet. From beginning to the end of man, the priest was to be washed. The question is, why? Why do you wash your hands? What is it about that the priest needs to do this? Think about it. They're drawing near to the Lord. Do you understand? This is a concept that we need to get with baptism. When we draw near to the Lord, there's going to be something required. This was required of the priest. They did not think about entering the temple unless they washed as they're coming in to draw near to the Lord. And just to prove this, look at what the next verse says in verse 20. When they go into the tabernacle of meeting, or when they come near the altar to minister, to burn an offering made by fire to the Lord, what do? They shall wash with water lest they die. Now, you can't put more emphasis on this regulation of washing than this. You come, you draw near to me, and you do not purge yourself, you do not cleanse yourself, you're a dead man. The first thing that is on the mind of the priest as they're drawing near to God, one thing above all else, I have to wash. This is the teaching of Torah, putting an urgency on this. I want to be clear on something. It didn't stop with the priests. No, it didn't. The people, anyone that would go up to the temple, do you know what they did? They washed before they went up. This is what they did. In fact, if you go to Israel today, you'll be hard-pressed when you go to the city of Jerusalem. You're going to be hard-pressed to not run into a mikvah. And it looks like this. This is actually one out of Jerusalem, okay? This is a mikvah. It's a ritual pool for cleansing. These things are all over the place in Israel. In fact, as of 2011, I believe, over 850 of these have been found in Israel. Over 850. This is amazing. And just to further this, to put this in perspective, let me read you some commentary. The mikvaot were so widely dispersed and integral to Jewish life of the Second Temple period that they have been found in every Jewish archaeological site in the land of Israel and are located in the homes of people from every social class. See, what you need to understand is they made it as readily available because you, as a person, man, woman, you don't go into the temple without being cleansed. You don't draw near to God, a holy God, a righteous God, without preparing. In Hebrew, I want to show you this. The definition is very simple. A mikvah is simply a collection, or it's a reservoir. And it could be a reservoir of water, which is this is why they call it a mikvah. There is another name, or there is another definition for this very same Hebrew word. And this is what I want to show you. It is hope. It's hope. And you think about that. So you're coming into the waters of a mikvah, and you're coming into the waters of hope. When you come into the waters of the baptism of Yeshua, you are coming into the waters of hope. See, we were outside. We were separated from God. We have a problem. Sin is the problem. But God has created the solution. He has created the waters of hope. And that's why, this was an integral part of Jewish life. It was indigenous to them. It was just the way of life. They longed to go in there. Why? Because they wanted to be joined with God. And they revered God as holy. Something that we, in our Western culture, we have no concept of holiness at all. Absolutely none. So we got to get back to our Jewish roots and understanding the definition of a mikvah, the purpose of this mikvah, of baptism. I want you to understand, for Jewish people, it's never been a symbolic gesture. It's not a symbolic gesture. It's a spiritual reality.
Hey there, this is Mike at Corner Fringe Ministries. Thanks for watching our video. If you liked the video or it encouraged you, do us a favor. Hit the like button. Don't forget to hit the share. And if you haven't done so already, please hit the subscribe button. Now, if you want to watch the rest of this video, hit the button here. And if you want to watch the rest of this series, you can check it out here. And don't forget, you can download the Corner Fringe Ministries app today on any of your Play stores. Thanks for joining us at Corner Fringe Ministries.